see the economy come back into the convention center and our story about Minneapolis really resonating with our clients and with clients around the country. Meet Minneapolis is also contained in the events program. You can see on the next slide, then we are asking for a slight increase in our funding for this program. As I said, we are the economic engine of the hospitality community, and as we talked about, the next 3 years really are going to provide a lot of large events with a lot of out-of-town guests and attendance, and this really translates to high economic impact. Especially in 2017 are our national volleyball tournaments that we will be hosting. One will be on the weekend of Memorial Day, and the other will be on the week of 4th of July. Now, these are
dates.
Generally slower dates downtown Minneapolis, especially in the hospitality community. So to have thousands and thousands and thousands of volleyball players and then their families in town on those 2 dates will drive an enormous economic impact to our community. Our events program also, over time, we have focused on being as efficient as we possibly can and have lowered our subsidies substantially, which you can see in 2015, we had our lowest subsidy in over a decade. Our projections right now for 2016, and as we talked about 2016, we always felt 2016 was a little bit of a softer year, but we're seeing that through the first 3 quarters of 2016, we have had a very, very strong year. We know that the fourth quarter of 2016 is lighter than last year, but I'm a little more bullish and think that our number can come down from this $8.1 million number, but it is a conservative number right now for what our subsidy will be at the end of this year. I mentioned again our total operating revenue, but as you can see, it has been on a steady increase over the last few years, and it is continuing to grow faster than our expenses. During this time of record-setting activity at the convention center, we have worked really hard, as I've mentioned, to keep these expenses flat. And as you can see, we've done a good job of doing that, even when our fixed expenses have been going up every year. And so we found ways through efficiency to make sure that we can keep this as a relatively flat increase in our expenses for the MCC. After years of reducing our FTE count, we are asking today for an additional FTE in our events program. And that leads me to our events program change proposal. This new FTE would be a technology services coordinator who is focused on generating revenue from our new video technology infrastructure. The chart below that you can see on this slide shows what our current technology services coordinator has been able to do over the last 5 years with a 114% increase in revenue. It's been a great resource for us, and we feel very, very strongly that this new position with our new video infrastructure will be able to match these numbers. We've looked at other convention centers around the country, mainly in Boston, Las Vegas, Cleveland, who have been engaged in this activity, and they are seeing great success. And so we're really excited about hopefully getting this new FTE so that we can put this person to work and really monetizing the investments that we've made in video signage.
And this position would be primarily a sales position or revenue generator, or is it?
It's a revenue generator. It is not a Meet Minneapolis position. It is a convention center position, so there is a services part to it. Okay. But in general, yes, they are selling the products that we have in video signage. Right. And then working on making sure that that's operational when the clients come in the building. That moves us on to our next change item in the budget, and that is our operating capital recommendation, and this is the plaza renovation. We are coming forward today to talk about the plaza, and in 2010, I stood before the council at that time in a study session and talked about the future of the convention center and where the convention center should be going in order to remain viable, in order to remain this great economic engine to the hospitality community, and also be competitive with what we were seeing across the country and other convention centers were doing. And in 2010, we talked a lot about the interior of the convention center, but we also talked about how the convention center connects our visitors to Minneapolis, and so that they can get that Minneapolis experience, and they can also spend their money that they bring from other communities in our community for the benefit of Minneapolis. And so as I have watched and seen all that is happening in Minneapolis and the big build that is happening and all the great things that are happening in Minneapolis, really focused on how the new Nicollet Mall connects to the convention center and how that can be used to get people to experience the great Nicollet Mall and the great businesses that we have on Nicollet Mall. As we were thinking about that and going down that road, Westminster Church came and started talking about some of the changes that they were going to be making to their campus, which is on Alice Rainville Place and Nicollet Mall and Marquette. Again, that kind of middle area that connects to the convention center. And Westminster was talking about how they had to take out their streetscape of Alice Rainville Place and really wanted to think broadly with me and with the convention center on how to better connect and make that experience down Alice Rainville Place better for our visitors and better for our community. And so it really got me thinking about the timing of the plaza and the plaza renovation. So we had talked about it in 2010. Well, when is the time? And so really what spurred me to bring this forward is that the timing of what's happening on the Nicollet Mall and what's happening on with Westminster leads me to start to look at maybe it's time to now say this is time for the plaza. We've been working with the plaza and trying to do different things for many years, different activations out on the plaza and to use it for different events and to try to engage better with the plaza and how it reacts to the rest of the city. And what we found is that there are some real limitations and challenges with the plaza. It's a green roof, which is fantastic, but it also leads to some challenges with having events out on top of a roof. You can't put a tent out there because you can't stake into a green roof in order to hold the tent down. There are no utilities out on the plaza. And so when you look to plug in electricity, it's very, very difficult to do that. And so these challenges, along with things like the different grading of the plaza, make it very, very difficult for us to use it for events and for us to use it to engage the community. As we thought about way forward with the plaza, we can kind of go to the next slide to give you an overview of what we're thinking about. We thought about making sure that there was a place for people to come and be, and that is sort of this closest area to 2nd Avenue and Grant Street. We wanted to try to move some of the plantings and the trees to the street instead of having the trees be onto the plaza itself. We've also noticed that a lot of our trees, because they're on a green roof, they're almost like potted plants, and so they've outgrown their lifespan and they're dying, and so we have to do something with them at some point. This gives us the opportunity to have a different type of landscape, to look at more pollinator-friendly plants and to look at ways to engage the community, especially in that space that is closest to Grant Street and 2nd Avenue. And then we looked at this great green lawn space and trying to flatten that space and use that as our event space to bring utilities to it, to make it much more useful, to put anchors in the ground so that we can put tents up, and to just be able to use that space in more ways. I've had many discussions with some of our clients that come every single year, and they have been excited about the opportunity to use this space, especially if there is some kind of weather cover. It's difficult to plan an event out there and then potentially it's raining or very, very cold. And so having some type of a cover for them to keep them out of the weather through a tent is something that is very, very desirable to them. As we've looked around the country, we see places like San Francisco, San Antonio, Houston, their convention centers are starting to look outside of their building and look at their streetscapes, their plazas, their parks that are outside of their building. And what we're finding is that experience, you hear a lot about experiential parts of events and experiential parts of going to convention centers. That's a big deal. And being able to, if you're in a convention center for 8 hours a day listening to speakers, being able to at lunch go outside and be engaged with beautiful green spaces is something that our industry is turning to. And we want to be at that forefront and make sure that this space works well for us in the future. We're also really looking at Alice Rainville Place. And so as we've talked to Westminster and talked about how they have seen their side of Alice Rainville Place, we've talked about what we could do to help with that connection on the other side, whether you call that the south side of Alice Rainville Place. And so that would be potentially part of this project. The pictures that I'm showing you are pictures of a bold $21 million project that I put together. The next picture especially shows an overview of that $21 million project. That project is not fully funded as part of the mayor's recommendation. The mayor has recommended $10.5 million. I think that we can do a good job for $10.5 million. We would have to sacrifice some of the things that you see in this picture and potentially some of the connections, but we would be able to do a good job on the plaza, make it useful going into the future, make it something that as clients come in and engage with us and as a selling piece, I always try to make Melvin's job easier at Meet Minneapolis, but as a selling piece for the convention center, the plaza would go a long way to ensuring that we continue to get events in the building and continue to stay up with our competition.
Councilmember Goodman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Johnson, as you know, I'll have a whole series of questions about this, since this is a public budget hearing, and I did communicate with you that I was going to be raising a series of issues. I'm wondering, in your third paragraph of your narrative, you state that the project will allow us to accommodate more events on the plaza, thereby increasing rental revenues. I'll start with that. Do you have a return on investment study? Do you have any kind of market analysis or any kind of written study that I can see that will give me a sense that what we invest, $10.5 million can do a lot of things for a lot of people in the city on a variety of levels. So what kind of ROI do we see from this? Who do you have hard evidence from, or what kind of study do you have to say that this investment will bring in how many people, and who are they, and when?
Councilmember Quincy, through Councilmember Goodman, we do not do a study, an actual ROI study, but we know that our clients, when they come in, they're asking about the use of the Convention Center Plaza. We know that as we talk to our clients that are here, they're talking about how they can expand their events, what they can do experientially to make their events something more than just paying a ticket, going in and seeing a product. They're saying that in order to draw the millennials to our public shows and to our events, we need something more, and we need something that will help drive that attendance. So there is no specific number, and it would trying to get a study or to grab out of thin air what that number could be would be virtually impossible, and there could be holes shot in it left and right. But we do know that our competition, San Francisco, San Antonio, Houston, they're doing these types of things.
Okay, Mr. Chair, those are warm weather climates where they can use the outdoors 12 months a year. The public shows that we have, the auto show, the boat show, the home and garden show, are all in the middle of winter. So I'm not sure how these public-facing shows would use the plaza in the middle of winter with the improvements that you've suggested. And without any evidence, study, or ROI, I can't be convinced that the business case can be made to spend $10 or $20 million this way. And what you're saying is you don't have that. It's just people saying to you, we want to use it. But what you're saying is the public shows want to use it, but they're in the middle of winter.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Goodman, we have sold ourselves as a Four Seasons city, and a city that has the ability to have winter events. And I think that we have done a very good job on that. We've been doing a good job on being able to bring events that are in the winter time to Minneapolis over the next few years. And I think one of the benefits of being able to use this as a more flexible space is that we have ideas to use it in the wintertime. I've been working with and talking to the Downtown Council in Holidazzle and some of those opportunities and how to make this a more festive space in the wintertime. Do I know what those revenues would be? I don't, but I do know that that is a desire. That is something that we talk about a lot, that we are a four-season city, and some of our uniqueness of Minneapolis is the fact that we have four seasons and that we are able to survive in the winter, even though some people from around the country and around the world don't believe that we can.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Johnson, that makes no sense to me. If it's public shows, the auto show, the boat show, the home and garden show, are you going to have like new cars sitting out on the plaza for the public shows? Or is it about conventions? And if so, which ones are going to use it in the middle of winter? Or is it about what you're talking about now, which is, well, the downtown council might want to program it, which I would take issue with actually, which is my next point. We don't have PV Plaza up and operating, and we don't have an operations plan for that. We're barely getting the commons up and running, and the downtown council is squeaking by on that. Now you're suggesting that we program and operate this plaza too, and more importantly, putting $10 million into this instead of into PV or the commons, and use this in a way that no one has any policy agreement on be used this way? I mean, and you say it right in paragraph 3, increasing the use of space by serving a community gathering place through programming. Have you talked to Marquette Place, the Ivy, CLPC? Have they said, yes, we want to see more programming on the plaza?
Councilmember Quincy, Councilmember Goodman, we have done programming and had events on the plaza for 26 years. And so we work with our community. We've talked with some of our community. I've not talked with specifically those people, but Catholic Charities, Westminster, the Loring Park community, we have had discussions with them. Everyone that I have talked to has been excited and interested. And when we talk about what could happen on the plaza, it's all of those things. It's not one thing. I don't want to talk about what I've talked about with the public shows because I don't want to put out ideas that they may or may not end up doing. And they have different ideas from a competitive standpoint of what they want to do. If you're asking, do I have a number for what the return on investment would be? I don't. But I know that it will help us. It will help us remain competitive for national conventions. It will help us bring more of an experience for many of our local events. It will help us do some community events out there. And it will provide a great connection to the Nicollet Mall and the rest of downtown, one that looks like we had a thoughtful plan in place, not one where the plaza looks like the 1989 Nicollet Mall with the 1989 Nicollet Mall lighting and all of the streetscape, and then all of a sudden you walk into this beautiful plaza or beautiful Nicollet Mall. I'm just bringing this forward as what I think would be a great time to do this and a great investment. These funds are coming from the Convention Center Fund. These are funds that over time we have, through our efficiency, put into, quote unquote, a savings account. I want to use, or I believe that it is a good opportunity for us to use some of these funds, which are in the Convention Center Fund, to fund this as an investment in the Convention Center.
Mr. Chair, so essentially you haven't talked to the neighbors at the Ivy, you haven't talked to the neighbors at Marquette Place, you haven't talked to CLPC, or you would know actually that they probably won't like using Alice Rainville Place as a way to get to the mall versus using what now would be considered Grant Street, because it's the businesses in Loring Park that actually need people to come to them, not Alice Rainville Place. And also you are aware that your plan improves property that's adjacent to Marquette Place, but I don't see any mention of the Marquette Place people paying for the improvements, just that the public would pay for improvements outside of the Marquette Place property. I just feel like, and I've said this 100 times before, to have a $20 million plan that I would not have heard anything about, that my neighborhood would not have heard anything about, that my neighbors immediately would not have heard anything about, to have it appear in a budget seems a little odd. I mean, I do represent this area. I've been involved in many convention center things. So it seems like she's not going to like this kind of thing, so we better not tell her till we figure out if we can get the mayor to fund it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. What did Click say about your recommendation?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Goodman. Click said that I think if there were 80 projects, we probably were the 79th project in their recommendation. And basically they said that in order to be successful in Click, you have to be in that for about 5 years. And so that's what they said. And they loved the project. They thought it was a great project. They just said I needed to wait my time.
And in fact, I even asked you to wait 1 year to work out some of the issues that I brought up, and you didn't even want to wait 1 year to try to answer some of these questions about what the immediate neighbors would think about it being a meeting place and all of that. Why is that? Why couldn't we wait 1 year?
Councilmember Quincy, Councilmember Goodman, I believe that the timing is right with the Nicollet Mall happening and Westminster. We could have a construction zone one time, be done. It would all work well together, and it would look like it was well planned out, and it would be a great opportunity to have it all done at one time. We have mentioned that the next 3 years are very, very busy for us and for the city. This would be an opportunity to prepare for that and to make it very, very seamless and look good together when it's done. That's why I brought it forward in this year.
So Click said, get in line with everybody else and work it through. And you're saying, nope, don't want to. Because actually Nicollet Mall is going to be done, other than the planting, in the spring from Grant Street to 10th. So this sub area of the mall is the first part to be done. It's been under construction now for a little over 2 years. So it's not like it's completely seamless. And I'll just say, Mr. Chair, that while you might regard these funds as convention center related, I would say they were sales tax related, thus eligible for any economic development or neighborhood use broadly defined. That's, I believe, what the legislation or language states. So I would argue that if we're going to spend $10.5 million, we might want to consider PV Plaza as a priority. We might want to consider the pool at Phillips. We might want to give the money to neighborhood associations because they got money out of the former TIF districts too. There might be projects in parts of town that actually we view this through an equity lens. All this talk about equity, yet $10.5 million to this downtown seems not to be looking through an equity lens, as far as I'm concerned. So I realize this is in my ward, and this helps my neighborhood and my constituents. I get that. But I thought we were all operating like with a big picture in mind about what priorities were and what the order of priorities are. And I think it would be somewhat hypocritical to put almost $11 million into this plaza when PV looks the way it does. The Commons isn't up and running. Look at the fountain in Loring Park. How about the Loring Greenway? What about the crime and safety problem we have on South Nicollet? I don't think fixing the plaza and turning it into an event space is what the neighbors think of when they think about the problem with livability crimes not one half block away. So I urged you and Spencer and Mark to take a step back for a year and talk about how to do this, and you absolutely refused to do it, which makes me think this is just pretty much about the Super Bowl and that you want to get this done in anticipation of the Super Bowl. I'm not sure what the hurry would be. If you've waited 6 years, why one more year with more public and policymaker participation isn't acceptable, other than I want to do it right now. Is there any other reason why you couldn't take a step back for a year and talk to the stakeholders? Because quite frankly, Mr. Chair, there would never be an $11 million project in my ward that any developer would propose and completely ignore my office. It just wouldn't happen. But apparently in the city, we can do that.
Well, I can't defend the timing of that, and I think everybody would agree that it would be nice to have more people included. I do want to reiterate that Mr. Johnson had talked about this in the study session back in 2010 and was continuing it as part of a plan. But that doesn't excuse the idea that we shouldn't have been more consultative along the process, along the way before this decision was made, because there's these art renditions obviously had time put into it. It would have been nice to include more people to see how it was going. But I think you're also, to be fair to you, doing what you've said you were going to do. This is part of the plan that you were installed. Your mission is not to, save money for the convention center. It's to use the money to improve our environmental or our economic development opportunities through the convention center. As a city asset, we have a responsibility to maintain that. And I think we also have an obligation to remain competitive, especially within our competitive field. But that's going to be something we're going to have a lot more conversation about, whether it's a worthy activity, whether the staging or the timing of this is appropriate, how to use resources is a big question, and will continue to be, I'm sure. I could ask one question, because you did say it's a green roof. Could you talk about what the life expectancy is of that roof? Are we going to be replacing the roof as part of that? Is this a maintenance facility that should be included anyway?
Chair Quincy, the roof is a green roof. It is a green roof for the 900 stall plaza parking ramp, which is operated and maintained by Public Works. Typically, a green roof lasts, depending on who you talk to, 30 to 40 or so years. This is coming in the 27-year range. And so by doing this, yes, we would be replacing that roof earlier than potentially it had to be replaced. But again, if you're going to make a significant investment in the plaza and take all the dirt away from the top of the plaza, it would be the time to replace the roof because it has received 27 great years of service, to replace that so that in 5 or 10 years you didn't have to come back and rip up all the new parts of the plaza.
So part of this project includes the replacement of the roof
Part of this project does include
within the $10.5 million budget.
within the $10.5 million.
The other thing I think we could talk a little bit more about, Councilmember Goodman brought up a good point about it's a part of the CLIC process. Traditionally, we'll take through lots of our capital projects through the CLIC process to get some participatory kind of budgeting process, some input from the community members who we've appointed. There's a collective, representative value in CLIC. They've done terrific work. And I can certainly see why this particular project would not score well with the traditional CLIC, because those are looking at public works projects, street paving projects, park board projects, and this does not fit within that scheme of kind of an analysis or review. And perhaps I don't want to put you on the spot for this, but perhaps Mr. Ruff, if you could talk about this, why wouldn't CLIC take this up? I mean, can we talk about our debt capital program and how this would fit in or wouldn't fit in, or what would be appropriate use of CLIC for their expertise or input?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mark Ruff, the Chief Financial Officer for the city. I think stepping back on this issue, first of all, you as policymakers ask us as department heads to give you our best judgment on what is important for each of our endeavors. So I think this is all part of the healthy public process. Certainly CLIC is a part of that healthy public process. I think it was Finance Department even before I arrived that had encouraged the convention center to go through the CLIC process to give policymakers options. Traditionally, most of the convention center improvements have been funded out of the convention center fund balance. The CLIC process is a process of more often, not exclusively, but more often having then the ability to issue debt supported by taxes. Right? And so we think that just anytime there's a major capital improvement, that it's a good process to go through. It does. It's a very public process in terms of the participation, and it is a vetting process. So I think that takes us several months, and this project went through that vetting process. I think the other issue that I always think about when we think about not just CLIC projects, but all capital improvements, which is what is the long-term funding plan for each of our endeavors? Clearly, the convention center is a piece of our city infrastructure. We have chosen to be in that business. When we're in that business, we want to make sure that we are showing our best face. We have made funding decisions for parks and streets recently to put together our best face. And I think just generally as the Chief Finance Officer, I am always looking at these kinds of improvements in the sense of not just what is exactly the return on investment for that particular investment, but what is the health of any of our infrastructure over the long term, and to make sure that we have adequate operating revenues to support our not only operating expenses, but our debt. And I would, because we are looking at not issuing tax-supported bonds for this, but really paying cash for it, then I think we need to concentrate long-term on what are the investments that pay off and reduce that operating subsidy over a long period of time.
Councilmember Goodman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ruff, you know how the CLIC process works, though, and they run every project that goes forward through a screen that includes things like leverage, need versus want, and equity. And when it ran through the professional screen that these independent people that we asked to be on this committee serve on, they rated it last or second to last. So clearly they don't think it meets our equity, our leverage, or our need criteria when comparing it to any other thing that was suggested in the entire list of things from all departments, including the MBC as part of it. So it's not just like it's only roads. The MBC, clock tower renovation, the elevators, all those things are in the CLIC budget. If you wouldn't mind, and maybe you'll say no, that's okay. Why don't you tell us what you told me this morning, what CLIC said to you about what they thought about this?
Well, there are formal reports from CLIC, and then there are informal conversations that occurred during the CLIC process. And so I would turn everyone to the formal CLIC process report. Generally, I would also say that my experience with in just being here 6 months, but what I've been told about the CLIC process is that roads and parks will always score better on the CLIC process because it is the people who are the residents that see themselves benefiting for those improvements, right? And then there is also a process of, well, is something going to be paid for anyway out of another source other than bonding? And I think that may have been, if you're referring to a comment saying that, well, this is likely to happen if there's a source other than bonding to pay for it.
Or it's likely to happen if politics get involved. And that's exactly what happened here. The CLIC rejected it, and the mayor overrode CLIC and put a multi-million-dollar line item in. That is what happened, that politics played into this, not need.
Well, politics is certainly playing into it every day.
And it's going to as we go forward, too,
Sure.
because I'm going to point out all the other things we can do with this money and have everybody take a vote on whether or not they think that neighborhoods are more important than the convention center plaza. We could all take a vote on that. I'm excited about that.
Now, that would be putting politics in front of a good policy.
And I guess what's good for the goose is what's good for the gander.
The point, though, is that this isn't something we're going to issue debt for. This is something that we'd already had a reserve for, so why would we go and incur debt on the taxpayers' back when there was another source that was already identifiable?
As I said, Mr. Chair, I think it's just part of the process, as I understand it, for any capital improvement, and certainly all of us can have opinions on what is more important, and that is an important part of this vetting process, not just the CLIC process, but this hearing process. And I'm glad that we can bring it forth.
Thank you. Councilmember, did you still have a comment? Okay. And even if we're going to have these conversations ongoing for a while, Mr. Johnson, thank you for that. Do you have more, I'm assuming? Or does that conclude?
If it's up to, I'm ready to conclude and really pass the baton on to Melvin Tennant. As part of our events program, Meet Minneapolis is in the convention center budget. And Melvin Tennant and Meet Minneapolis and his staff have been a great partner to the city of Minneapolis and to the convention center. Much of our success over the last few years has been because they have been doing a great job selling our city and selling our convention center. And so Melvin is going to come forward with some supplemental budget requests that will be laid out in his presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. And obviously, we're going to be talking a lot more about the plaza issue, but I'm sure I could get consensus from all my colleagues on the terrific job you do every day running the convention center. We have a terrific venue, and your staff is doing a tremendous job making sure it's putting the best face forward for the city of Minneapolis. So we thank you for your efforts on that.
Thank you.
As well as Target Center and all the other stuff you do for us. Mr. Tennant, welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Quincy, members of the committee. My name is Melvin Tennant with Meet Minneapolis. And as Mr. Johnson said, I'm here to provide some detail on our organization and specifically on the supplemental budget request. I'll quickly go through some of these slides since I know you're very familiar with our organization, but first wanted to just remind you of the functional organizational chart of Meet Minneapolis and the areas of responsibility that we carry on behalf of the city of Minneapolis. It's coming up actually on 30 years that we've had this relationship, so we thank you for that vote of confidence over that period of time. The next slide does show the 2016 adopted budget, our 2017 recommended funding, a line showing the change items, which I'll provide greater detail on in just a moment, but that is a snapshot of what our fiscal situation looks like, understanding that of the entire budget that Meet Minneapolis has, the city does invest in us about 80% of what we then use to sell and market our city. 20% of our dollars do come from the private sector, largely because our investment from the city does allow us to leverage that into the private sector. So I think that's a great example of a public-private partnership. Again, since I know that you're very familiar with what we do, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the core programs, but just to start off, sales, first and foremost, is what we do. We have to get the customer to sign on the dotted line, and that is what our largest area of responsibility is if you were to look at our organizational chart and our full time equivalent comparison there. So you would see that. Followed by destination branding and strategy, which is our name for our marketing area. So marketing supports all of our direct sales efforts. So between our sales and marketing functions within Meet Minneapolis, more than 70% of our resources go towards those functions. In destination services, just to quickly let you know that it's important for us to make sure that visitors of all types have great experiences so that they'll want to come back. There's a direct correlation in the experience that visitors have and their willingness to want to return. So that is why we invest significantly in destination services. In our public affairs area, basically community outreach, we spend a lot of time working with our council members on functions such as our sister cities relationships and other areas. We have council members that are involved with us in our direct sales efforts, and I think each and every one of you has been involved with us in one of our initiatives over the recent years, in fact. And of course, finally, our administration area, which is the back of the house, and make sure that everything does run smoothly. So next, we want to focus our attention on the budget change items summary. And you can see the breakdown there. The categories of enhanced target marketing, convention and major event funding, our customer and stakeholder engagement are the three large categories. The example, starting with our enhanced target marketing, as you can see, pre, during, and post-event activities. Again, just to be very transparent, a lot of the motivation for wanting to do some significant investment is partially because we have major events coming in. But the platform that we will have with major events coming in will only happen really very infrequently. So we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to permanently increase the level of awareness of visitors, to basically increase the number of visitors, and also to come up with strategies that allow us to increase the length of stay. All of those items directly impact economic impact and also direct tax collections. In terms of our major convention and event funding, we live in a world where there are requirements as a condition of sale oftentimes to provide incentives for groups coming in, but the payoff is always significantly more. I'm sorry, I didn't take the time to introduce my colleagues that are here with me, but one of those colleagues that is behind me is Brent Forrester, and his area is destination sales, and he has put together statistics which show that whenever there is convention support money provided, that the return is about $8 per dollar that is invested. So those are statistics that we have. And again, we want to remain competitive in the marketplace and be able to continue to secure major events that I think are really great for our city. The next smaller item there, flexible welcome program. I did talk about our services area and the need to make sure that our visitors, when they come in, not only feel welcome, but make sure that they are inclined to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are available to them when they're here. We want them to go shopping. We want them to eat in our restaurant. So that welcome program allows us to extend that, and also, as I mentioned earlier, really help us to ensure that visitors want to come back again and again.
Mr. Tennant,
Yes,
if I could really quickly, the welcome program, is that something that's tangible for everybody, or is it customized for individual groups? Is it available at the convention center, or is it the visitor information center?
It's all of the above. It was born of the idea that, Mr. Chairman, that when we have major events coming in, or if you've gone to cities with major events, oftentimes the experience begins as soon as you get off the plane. You'll see banners, you'll see people with certain attire on saying, "Welcome to our city." You might see some cities that offer in the airport at baggage claim bands playing something that really depicts the mood of that particular city. It's all of those types of programs, and it's so people that are coming in, yes, can be a part of it, but from the visible signage part of it, sometimes it's banners, sometimes it might be electronic signage. Those are things that I think would certainly be available for the benefit of locals as well. The registration infrastructure, just real quickly, this is a legacy program is what I would call this. This is going to be used by some of the major events that are coming that do require volunteers. Events like Special Olympics, if we were to get those, would require 10,000 volunteers. Super Bowl requires lots of volunteers. So we just want to have a permanent situation where we can manage volunteers and be able to deploy people whenever we need them, so it's not starting from scratch every time. Again, a legacy program. And then finally, the Foix de Tours, which is a program with our sister city in Tours, France, where next year in 2017, we will be the featured destination at a regional fair in Tours, is roughly 100 miles south of Paris, and a very strong visitor region. We typically couple the activities in Tours with some significant sales calls in Paris. So real quickly, as I sum up, I want to just remind you of our performance measures. We have 4 major performance measures that through our city contract we focus a lot of attention on, including hotel room nights, leisure leads, private revenue, and MCC revenue. We have about 17 total performance measures, but these are the ones that we feel are really in the position to move the needle, so to speak. So this is where we spend most of our attention. And just to give you an idea, through the third quarter, we're doing very, very well in each of these indicators, and we should achieve all of these goals for 2016. Again, our team has done a wonderful job, and so we're very proud of the work that they've done.
I have a quick question on the hotel room nights.
Yes, sir.
Is that a pickup actual incurred, or is that a sales projected into the future?
This is a sales projected in the future, but again, going back to Brent, we do have statistics which tell us that based on a certain amount of wash, we know that we have to basically overachieve in terms of the number of room nights to basically actualize the room nights that the hotels are expecting.
Okay.
But these are projected.
And would that be the same for the convention center revenue projection?
Convention center revenue is actual dollars that are
so that's
counted in the bank.
Of current year, how many dollars are booked through? Mr. Johnson earlier said we'll be in the 18 million neighborhood. So that would be terrific.
In the year for that particular operating period, yes, sir. The next slide just gives you some trending on those four performance indicators. Generally, an upward trend. I'll just point out that on the booked room nights, we did have an off year in 2013, but we have done some retooling in our sales area and have full confidence that we'll continue to grow that number. Again, just to give you an idea of some of those other performance measures that I mentioned, to let you know that we run we operate in a very quantifiable manner, and we want to just reassure you of that. So that is all I have, unless there are specific questions.
Okay. Are there any questions, council members? Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tennant, and all the Meet Minneapolis staff for being a valued partner.
And I apologize for not introducing them.
Did you already introduce them?
I did not. I'm not sure who was introduced. I got here a little late, didn't realize you were starting earlier, but as far as Meet Minneapolis staff that wears two hats, we have Katie Smith, who's actually headquartered at the Convention Center, Sandy Christensen, we have Bill Deef, we have Brent Forrester, and I think that's
good.
That's all that we have.
Oh, good.
That's here. But we have a great team, about 63 of us that really enjoy the work that they do day in and day out, really selling and marketing our great city, and they do it with passion. And I think the results do speak for themselves, sir.
I agree. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, was there anything concluding on this? Okay. Thank you very much. I think that concludes for right now the Meet Minneapolis and the Convention Center and Target Center budget presentations. So at that point, we can start to make our transition over to the Finance Property Services. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us and for all the work you're doing every year, every day.